Welcome to another episode of Over the Should. I am beyond excited to announce our next guest. Ivana, I don't want to get Ivana's last name wrong, Namjesnik, and I'm going to let you correct me because I'm sure I just butchered that, is an amazing woman. She is a coach with 2 years of experience. She's a founder of a company. She has a decade of experience in strategy, storytelling, and service design, which really speaks to my love language. So I'm so excited to get into the weeds of that with you. You also have coined a phrase called the executive entrepreneur, which I find really insightful, and I cannot wait to learn more about what that means to you and how you use it with your coaching clients. Since I did a terrible job with your name enunciation, will you please help clarify that for us, and also tell us anything else that I might have left off from your bio?
Okay. First of all, I am so excited and so honored to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for the invite. I just appreciate having conversations with smart women, and you're definitely one of them. So, so happy to be here. As far as my last name go, like you can definitely tell that I am not originally from United States. I am somewhere from Eastern Europe, even though we pretend that we are Western Europe, which means that I'm from the Balkans region. I'm originally from Croatia. My name is Ivona Namjesnik. So you did like a fairly good job. I appreciate you trying. It's so funny. Like I always tell to people, like, if you can say like Ivanka or Ivana, like it's right up that alley, like, so you can just call me Ivona. Also, you did a really good job introducing me. I am like, every time when somebody is talking about me, in a sense, like all of the things that I've done in my career, or, like the things that I've started or projects, I'm always like, oh, I actually am that human who did all of those things. So I started originally in marketing, and like marketing was my first love. I love stories. I love how using the right story makes you connect with either people or organizations or companies. So storytelling is a big one for me. Like I was that nerdy kid who always read books and like carried like just like a bunch of books everywhere. And then I somehow gradually moved into service design and strategy because I noticed that, within a company, and I was lucky enough to work for a company that was fast growing and I could contribute my input. Like the founder used to ask me the questions about what should we do next and what do you think the market will respond to. I noticed that if you tell your stories right, you can actually make a meaningful change to a certain industry or a market. And then 5 years ago, I had like a really rough period in my life and I started going to therapy. And I just noticed that therapy is essentially just like the story we keep telling ourselves. So yeah. I'm like marketing my brain out, if that makes any sense. I'm like, well, you know what? My brain is having a campaign and I refuse to believe it. So in the past 5 years, I got like 5 or 6 or 7, I stopped counting, coaching certifications. Like some of them were like about the holistic health and the other ones were like about business. And 2 years ago, I started coaching women. And, as a consequence, and of all of these things that I just said, like this is the longest intro ever.
Love it. I love every minute.
I actually had this moment of women who reach out to me, and the ones who were interested in working one-on-one were these women almost like, number one, they didn't know who they were outside of the executive title. So the life on the outside looked like really good. Like they had the title and the bonuses and the corner office and like the hair was perfect and the husband was there and 2 kids and the golden retriever, like, like the whole picture. But they felt this enormous pressure to perform constantly, and their life turned out to be their career. So when you would ask them, well, who you are outside of your career, they were like, well, what do you mean? Like, like, I'm like, well, what makes you happy? Like, what brings you ease? What makes you like joyful? And they're like, I'm confused. And that was like a moment that I realized like, well, actually that is my story, because 5 years ago, I didn't have that answer either. So I started working with them on that clarity, who you are outside of the executive title. And actually a lot of them realized, well, I'm actually an entrepreneur. you know? And
Mhm.
like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to start your own business, even though a lot of them turned out to be coaches or consultants or move into fractional roles. But it means like they have an entrepreneurial mindset, like they are the go-to women in the company.
Mhm.
Like if you have a problem, you're going to go to, I don't know, Jackie or Barbara or Allison or Pamela, for that matter. Like she can work things out, like there is no project too big and no deadline too tight. And then I encourage them through the coaching to be like, well, if I can build somebody else's business, I can definitely start my own and I can grow it out the same way that I was growing everybody else's businesses
Mhm.
throughout my career. So the executive entrepreneur is that woman, like she's walking the bridge. She's learning who she is outside of the title. And she might be an entrepreneur in a sense like, oh, I'm going to start my business, but she also might be just learning how to apply the entrepreneurial mindset in the right way in the right company.
Mhm.
So, did I
I
answer
love
your
that.
question?
That was the best introduction. I also feel like maybe we're sisters that were separated by a continent or something like
Yes.
that because you're amazing and we've had such a similar walk. I completely relate to being the kid with the books, self-recognized as a nerd, and I don't think I've changed very much from a nerd perspective. I fully embrace that and accept that. But I had a similar journey where I think that when you are a high achieving person, you perform for acceptance, you perform for love, you perform for words of affirmation. And so that performance becomes almost addictive.
Yes.
You are hustling to the next thing so that you can feel those accolades again. And it's
Mm-hmm.
great for your career growth because you usually end up in a corporate office because of your
Yeah.
hustle. It is terrible for you living your life as who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
who is Ivana? How does she show up when
Mm-hmm.
she's not at work hustling? How does she show up when she's not at the PTA trying to make sure that her kids have representation and have everything they need? And you're looking like you're
Mm-hmm.
playing the part of the mom with the husband and the two kids and the
Mm-hmm.
golden retriever. And I think I personally got to a point where I was so burned out and so done with everything.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I could not keep going this way, not one more step.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you, and I'll say it a little differently because I don't know if this was how you felt, but I struggled also with imposter syndrome. I had all these
Oh yeah.
accolades. I kept you're hustling from one thing to the next. So you don't even take a moment to think about your accomplishments. But I had
Yeah.
all these things and still I felt like a total fraud. Like somebody's going to find me out. I don't actually belong in a VP role.
Mm-hmm.
And so when
Yep.
I was moving into the coaching business, it was the same way. Somebody's going to find out that I'm actually probably not good at this. So I'm with you, like 7 or 8 certifications at this point. And it was just because I
Yep.
kept telling myself, well, if I just had that one other thing, then I know I would
Mm-hmm.
feel more comfortable. But at the end of the day, most of the time, a little bit of education and the tools you already have inside of you are enough to get started. But you have to get past your own imposter syndrome, your
Yes.
own sticky floors. And man, that's hard.
It is. Thank you so much for saying that out loud because from my experience and the experience of my clients, a lot of women who are in executive positions, they are VPs, directors, they're part of the C-suite, they definitely have a seat at the table, board members. They fear like if the boss is calling them up to have a meeting, I'm going to get fired. Like this is for sure happening. Like I'm going to get fired. Like it doesn't matter that she has this tangible proof of doing a good job, delivering results, like helping the company grow. It's this imposter syndrome that like nothing is ever good enough. So when they even like what you said, when they're transitioning into coaching, it's almost like, well, I have one coaching certification, but obviously that's not good enough. I need to have 5 to be able to say that I am a coach, or God forbid that I want to be both coach and a consultant. Well,
Mhm.
then obviously I need coaching certifications, but then I also need like 7 different strategy slash mindset slash storytelling slash marketing certifications or PMP certificates or whatever it
Yep.
is, like nothing is ever good enough,
Mhm.
and you can't grow and your company can't grow past the mindset that you have. Like
Yeah.
how much you think you're worth is actually what the world, especially the business market, what they are going to reflect to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what's interesting seeing this play out over the last few years? Even if a company knows you're worth more because they see that you perform at an exceptional level, but
Mhm.
you don't value yourself that same way,
Mhm.
in many cases, they're going to say, we've got a bargain here, and we're not going to
Mhm.
pay her where she probably should be paid because she doesn't know any better yet. And so I find that just understanding your worth, your value, what you bring to the table, and then having the confidence to advocate for
Mhm.
yourself and to
Yes.
find somebody who will advocate on your behalf when you aren't in all of the rooms yet, that is a huge game changer for your career.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I call success tax, like if you don't know how to say no to your boss or, like your colleagues or in general in the business environment, then you're going to get another project and you're going to get another tighter deadline. You're going to get like all of the things that you're actually complaining about because it's not them. They are in a way like testing you. And it sounds like they're doing that on purpose, but I believe like people always have the best intentions at that heart.
Mhm.
It's just that they have the best intentions for themselves. So what actually happens is like, well, like Jessica is so good at like handling complex projects, like we should probably give her all of the complex projects in the world. So it's like success tax. You are doing something right, but your reward is getting more of the thing that is actually causing you stress and anxiety and, like even like what you said, health problems,
Mhm.
because you don't know how to say no. Your no is actually your body literally nailing you to the ground, like nailing you to the bed. And then
Mhm.
you're like, well, you know what? I'm too tired. Like I had that moment as well. I'm not an exception to the rule, which is what I always tell to my clients. I'm just like few steps ahead of them in the game. Like I've learned how to say no because I didn't know it. And I remember vividly, like 5 years ago, I was crossing the street. Like I had the roughest day at work. I was so tired. And I thought to myself, you know what? What would be really, really good today is that like if I could get hit by a car, but not like I didn't want to die, like I just wanted to end up in a hospital for like 5 or 7 days, then I will have good enough of an excuse to take a PTO because, like I'm in a hospital, I had like a cracked rib or something. So I never had like this despair of like, like I want to die, I want to kill myself. I'm not that type of person, but I just want to do a freaking break, like I'm not sure can we swear here, so I'm opting for freaking, but like isn't that like so weird? Like I wanted to get hit by a car like,
Oh
just
my
to
gosh.
rest for a
That
bit.
is so relatable. That is so relatable. I mean, I'm going to go dark here for a second, but there's been times where I'm like, do I need both ovaries? Maybe something happens to one, and then I definitely have to lay in bed. Like I have to have bed rest, and then other people have to do the things. Do
Yes,
my children know the difference between a washer and dryer? This remains to be seen.
yes.
I'm not sure, but if I had to lay in bed, they would have to figure it out.
And like I've heard so many of these similar examples. Like we have a problem. Like that is an actual problem. So if you are thinking this thought, these thoughts, or any of the similar thoughts that like fall into the same like trash can of like dirty, filthy thoughts, like you have a problem. And it's a problem that you actually have a lot of control over. You can change that. But saying no to somebody, especially if that no means changing the way that you have been doing things and the things that actually got you to this success and stability and almost like security, because the title is perceived as a certain security, it feels freaking scary. And I don't think that we talk about that enough. Like I literally got like body chills right now. It feels scary to say no to things that might risk you the lifestyle, status, and security that you currently have.
Oh, 100%. So two things to pull on with that, if you don't mind. The
Yeah.
one thing I think that's really important is just us having this conversation and recognizing how relatable the things we say are to each other are. I think it's really important for women to be in community, to be
Yes.
able to talk to each other this candidly and say,
Mm-hmm.
my husband is driving me absolutely insane, or the
Mm-hmm.
boss is putting another project on my plate.
Yep.
And then to be able to recognize you're not alone. Kristen Neff has a exercise that I do with my coaching clients, usually in a group setting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called self-compassion jars. And I don't announce it as that, but I have these
Mm-hmm.
jars and they're labeled with, body image issues, um,
Mm-hmm.
overworking, feeling like you're failing as a parent, whatever those things are. And then I ask the women, I give them a bunch of marbles, go drop your marbles in whatever one you feel relatable to. And the amount of the jars just fill up, and then the women look at each other and go, I feel like I'm failing as a parent too. I feel like I can't
Mm-hmm.
get ahead in my career too. And these conversations unfold. So now you recognize this is something other women experience. You have community, which is really important. But my next
Mm-hmm.
question to you is, and then what? How do you help women
Mm-hmm.
get the clarity? How do you help women practice saying no so that those full body chills, that feeling like I'm going to be sick, you move past that? What do you do with your clients?
Mm, that is such a good question. So the reason why I didn't start a mastermind or group coaching or anything of that kind is because I want my clients, at least in this phase. It doesn't mean that something is not going to change in the next, like, let's say 5 years or 2 years or whatever. But in this phase, I want them to have not one-on-one support, but one-on-one ability to face their fears in a safe environment. Because I know that I was so afraid to say those things out loud. And when I joined group programs, I almost like hid behind the camera. Like I could relate to all of those women, but I was like, I don't have to say it out loud. So it's probably not that really real for me. So when they are one on one with me, just like we are having this conversation, they've got nowhere to hide. So what happens as a result, my clients are women who are really ready to face themselves and they want to take complete ownership over their lives. They want to say, like stick it to, like the family pressure, to like the society's pressure, to all of these rules and roles that we have been playing, at least I have been playing since I was a little kid. Like I was like, I don't know, maybe had like 8 or 9 years old, because we are taught from such an early age, be good, be nice. Like if you don't want to hug somebody as like a little girl, I remember like, but he's your uncle or whatever, like he's our friend, like, oh, you should give them a hug, like, or you should allow that person to hug you. And like there's nothing from the outside, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's like those are good people, my uncles are the best. But sometimes you don't want to do that. But what you're left with is almost like it's engraved in you, or like pressured into you or pushed into you, that you need to behave in a certain way to get acceptance, to be perceived as good, to be good enough. So when I'm one-on-one, I ask my clients, the first exercise we do, the very first one, it's like, it's a workshop. It's a coaching session, but it's a workshop. I pull in all of my like design thinking methods and I translated them into coaching. I was like, okay, here we have a timeline of your life. So let's say, like you go from 0 to, I don't know, 33 or 41 or whatever is the number. Can you tell me about different things that you have achieved, like, and, they might need a minute or two. Oh, like this is when I became a VP. This is when I became a mom, like, this is when I got married, all of the good stuff. Okay, can you now give me a little bit of like a background to those moments? Like, and then we go like layer by layer. And what happens in the end? Like, I ask them like, well, what are the sticky moments that you have on that timeline? And it turns out that the sticky moments aren't the accolades, are in the promotion, or in the moments like when they on the outside succeeded. It's like 9, they were on a playground and like somebody flipped a coin base and said, go buy your expensive shoes, because their parents didn't have enough money at that point, so they spend their whole life trying to get money, like, or
Mhm.
have money. So we work through 3 months of like working out those sticky moments, because once you can release yourself from those sticky moments, I swear to God, I do not need to tell you how to say no. You know that by heart. You just stop being afraid of saying no.
I love that. I often refer to it as an uncaging. So
Mm-hmm.
when I had my pseudo meltdown, I realized in that moment I had I was a willing participant of erecting bars around myself that ended up caging me in. Now, a lot of those start in our childhood, in the environment that we're raised, and it starts with just be a good girl, don't cry, just smile, hug so and so, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. Oh, he was picking on you because he liked you. All
Oh
the
yeah.
things we're told when we're little. And so we're like, oh, these are truths. These are truths that everybody must know. And I went ahead and continued to erect them like, and I should absolutely be serving in church because that's what a good girl,
Mhm.
now good woman would do. And I need to join every event and committee my kids are part of because I think that's what a good mom would do. And all of these bars until I was so trapped in a life that I had created for myself and yet had zero agency over.
Yes.
That's when I had my little meltdown moment. But I think if we could raise our kids different to start with, and that
Mm,
requires us to unlearn so much of the learning we had, raising our kids different and then teaching ourselves and showing them
yeah.
no is a two-letter word in a complete sentence, and the answer is
Yes.
no. I mean, that's a game
Yeah.
changer for us. And then to your success stacks, every time you say no, you're like building this stack of evidence that you can.
Hmm.
Nothing horrendous happens. Somebody, maybe they don't like you anymore. Is that the biggest loss, that somebody doesn't like you because you have boundaries? Tell me more.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely agree with you. Usually the boundaries are the first quote unquote problem that we are solving, but we are not solving for a problem with boundaries. We are solving for the uncomfortable feeling, not a bad feeling, just the uncomfortable feeling, because I don't believe feelings can be good or bad. It's like just an uncomfortable feeling of how the people will react to you finally saying no.
hmm And that's where I think so much of the fear comes up, right? Because at the end of the day, for the most part, you probably want to be liked, at least by the people you care about. So when you start saying no and you put the boundaries in, that fear sneaks up that they're going to see me different. And being able to move, accept that for what it is. Yes, they might. How do you feel about yourself? Check in with yourself at the moment. Is this an authentic decision for you? Those things are
Yeah.
hard, but to what you're talking about, like the trash thoughts, how do you replace those and create a mindset of I need to check in with myself. How am I feeling in this
Hmm.
moment? And listen, I've been on this journey for a while, and there's times where I came down really hard on the boundaries. Like I swung the pendulum from yes to everybody to
Yes.
what, why? Why are you talking to me right now? I didn't really say that, but like I swung hard. And so I might have overcorrected, and I have to go back and say, I'm working on creating
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. What I said
Mm-hmm.
was probably a little too far. So I'd like to back
Mm-hmm.
that up a little. And can we talk about these set of expectations? This is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling right now. I think that's all part of the journey of getting back to your own agency and autonomy over your
Mm-hmm.
life. Are you seeing that with your clients?
Um, I am seeing a lot of the similar things because I feel that we serve similar profile of women, if you will. um, and this thing that you just described, I think it's part of our almost it's like a character trait. So if you are trying to get to success, you're not satisfied when you're just a director. And I'm using like air bunnies to describe that. It's like a lot of people would be very happy as directors. No, no. You have to become a VP, and then you need to become a senior vice president, and then you need to become a board member, and then all of those just director
Mm,
feels like a failure. So when you have that character trait of like wanting to push things, like to its absolute limit, what usually happens is that when you get into air bunnies again, personal development, program certifications, whatnot, um, is that you push that side as well. So you go, as you said, from one extreme of yes to everything to no to everything. So you actually like what is the real lesson, in my very humble opinion, is finding the balance. And it's like how to walk the bridge of what's really important to you, knowing that some people will disagree with that. That's completely okay. But at the same time, it will attract the people you can relate with, which also brings me to what you said about communities. Like when I started, like my coaching business, a lot of my coaches told me like, you need to call yourself a marketing coach. Like I had business mentors and, business coaches and whatnot. And you probably know that part as well. Like you need to call yourself a marketing coach because that's very profitable. It is very easy to monetize. You have this, like very big experience. You're just like switching it over to, like being a business coach. And the phrase felt dirty in my
Mhm.
mouth. I was like, I cannot possibly do that. Not because I don't know marketing. I definitely do, but it's not like the sole foundational part of what I want to do. It took me 2 years to figure out what is the phrase and what is the community that I want to build. So I always say, like, I am dedicated to serving C-suite women and offering them coaching, consulting, and community. Like, that's what the co stands for, like coaching, consulting, and community. And the community is built around executive entrepreneurship, because I think those are the two pretty quote unquote different things that we don't hear
Mhm.
about very often. Like, if you are an executive, you are usually expected to have like this linear thinking approach, like you want to end things, like do what we have been doing but get us better results, essentially. Like, that is the rule in corporate. Like,
Mhm.
do not change anything, but I just want the company to grow, the department to grow, or the team to grow. I'm like, like, it's not how things usually work. And then on the entrepreneurship side of things, you often hear people, like, take a lot of messy action, like, you need to experiment, you need to do things on your own, be authentic, like, nobody, at least when I was beginning, nobody was talking about bridging the two. Like, well, I am an executive. Like, I am not turning into a struggling entrepreneur. Like a lot of people go into entrepreneurship because they either got fired, they hit rock bottom, they don't know what else to do. And I was like, no, like, I have a big fancy title and a big fancy paycheck, and like, all of the bonuses and business class, and like, all of the shenanigans, all of the pizzazz. So I'm not starting from scratch,
Mhm.
but I do have an entrepreneurial mindset, you know
Mhm.
and I don't want to say that me as an entrepreneur is like, like, I think that my experience can actually serve me really well. My expertise in marketing, like storytelling, strategy, service design, it can serve me well. So,
Mhm.
when my clients decide that they want to become entrepreneurs, I'm like, let's go, girl. Like, this is how we do offer coaching, like, it's one-on-one. We design your offer because the offer is the foundational part of the business. But I essentially help them feel like rookies again, like, because if you've been executive for a long time, starting your business is like, it's a little bit shaky, like, you're like a junior person again. So what I really wanted to offer those women is a sense of belonging, and a sense that they don't have to do it on their own. Like, I read this stat recently, I think from Forbes or New York Times, or like, one of the big media houses, where they said, like, we've never had less female executives. And it was like a big article, like, the percentage dropped. I'm not sure, like, I'm going to spitball here, so I don't want to say false numbers, but essentially, like, that was the big news. Like, we never had less female executives. And they positioned it as something bad. Like, this is horrible. We need more females, like, being board members and, like, in the
Mhm.
C-suite and da da da. And I was like, maybe we don't,
Mhm.
because we are finally seeing a wave of women doing what actually works for them. What I'm choosing to believe is that we now have enough women who are self-conscious enough to say, I'm not sure, can we swear here, but like, they say fuck you to the
Mhm.
system, and they're actually not building, for a great career, but they are building for a great life. A players, they don't want to have another A title on the resume. They want to have an A life. Yes, I want to be a fucking great mom. I want to spend time with my kids. I also want to have a time off. I don't want to be checking my phone every 2 seconds and seeing if Josh from marketing sent me another email that he doesn't understand something. Like, women are not tired from being ambitious. We are tired from not being seen, our contribution not being seen, we not being respected. So when I am building my own company, that's the standard that I'm setting.
Mhm.
So I chose to interpret it as a good thing. Yes, we've never had less female executives. And I'm not saying that the road itself is bad. If you want to be an executive, yes, the system can be changed within. It's hard, but it can be done.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if you've decided to build a company, that's also a fucking great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a world of and for me in this
Yes.
situation. You can strive towards that C-suite or those executive roles. And you can have your own business if that's what you choose to do. You have to set your infrastructure up, find somebody like you, Ivana, to work with. I think that those are all really good things. I'll say, as somebody who still has a corporate career while I'm building out my coaching business,
Yes.
I would love to see a world where more doors are open to women and women are more confident to open the doors themselves, because in my industry, only 23% of leadership is females. Only 20%. So you walk into the room, and oftentimes for myself, I am one or maybe two. There's just one or two women in a room full of then 12 men. And what happens there usually is, hey, Pamela, will you take the notes in today's meeting? And that happens.
I'm not a personal assistant. I'm another VP.
No,
Like,
I am equal to everybody in this room. And so some of the things I started to say as I was learning, to find my own confidence is, actually what I'm going to be contributing to this part of the meeting. So I really want to pay attention to what everybody's saying, not just trying to take notes. Or, taking notes is a really important skill for us as executives. So why don't we give Chad an opportunity to do so? And just trying to frame it differently in a way that was not a straight up no, because I didn't start out in a place where I could just go to the no. I had to work up to that level of confidence. So I would always couch what I said. I would cushion it to make it a little softer. But I love this idea of an A life. The way you said that was beautiful. It was like a whole sermon you just took us through a second ago. It was awesome. I'm here for that. And for women starting their own companies, you've done it. It's something that I'm aspiring to do. And for the women who want to be executives, who want to change the demographic of the C-suite, you go, girl. Do that.
Yes.
Open the doors and stop holding yourself back because you don't apply for jobs because you don't have the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to give almost like a small disclaimer. So I have clarity coaching, which is usually like the first phase, let's call it like that. And it's actually aimed at women who are trying to figure out who they are outside of the executive role. So some of them, not all of them, but some of them actually figured out that they want to stay in the industry. They just don't want to stay in the company that they have been a part of. Like, I love being an executive. I love it. I love this specific industry or this specific branch that I have been contributing for the past 15 years. I'm passionate about it. I want to do it. I just don't want to have like the same role, the same title. I'm ready for more, whatever more means for her. So I'm not encouraging women to, like go out and, like, oh, I want to start my own business, I'm burning everything to the ground. No. But what I am encouraging you is to figure out who you are outside of the executive title. And if you want to become possibly maybe an entrepreneur, you can do that while you are in an executive role. Build out your business to like 60 or 70% of the profit that you have, like in your corporate role. And I can guarantee you can do that like with 3 or 4 consulting jobs. Like, you don't need a lot. But build out your business to that like 60 or 70% of income that you have with your executive title. And then then make an informed decision. It's a life of and. Like, we are not going and burning the bridges, and we are not going and, like saying, oh my God, like everything sucks. Now I need to change everything. Like, don't swing the pendulum to the next extreme, as you said. Just allow yourself to explore. I think it's one of the things that I encourage, with my clients. Like, what would it mean to you to be curious right now about what's possible for you?
I love that. Yeah. Where do you want to be in 5 years or 15 or whatever that landmark is? And then how do you act like her today to get there? Something that's really important to practice. I love that. So with the service, the design service and the storytelling aspect, and then working with women on their timelines and the places they've held themselves back and kind of breaking those stories, how much of the work that you do with women also involves personal branding?
That's a very good question. Well, my experience is that personal branding is a byproduct of what we do. So I don't have this very nice spreadsheet where I say, oh, like, we are going to position you as an XYZ and this is what you're supposed to do. Because I feel that the answers come from within, like nobody else could have told me the phrase executive entrepreneur because it didn't exist. Like the phrase
Mm-hmm.
didn't exist. I had to figure it out on my own. What we do instead is I help them figure out what is the, let's call it like red thread,
Mm-hmm.
that goes through all of their experiences, personal, professional, their interests, their passions, like not necessarily maybe even passions, because passion is pretty fickle, but their constant interest, like something that you were interested in when you were, I don't know, like 12 and then 17 or 21, or, like you really wanted to do that major, but mom said, like that's a bad idea, like nobody ever hires for XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
So we figure out what is the red thread, and then personal brand almost like emerges as a consequence of that. I am a huge fan of being as specific as possible in your positioning, because I believe that you don't need like to serve millions and millions of people to make a change. I'm like, well, if you serve 20 and you serve them well and you do your job right, then that is going to create a ripple effect. So that's how I think about personal branding. Um, but maybe that's also because I'm not a huge fan of like spreadsheets or whatnot in the context of coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I gave a speech about 2 weeks ago, and it was
Hmm.
meaningful community conversations. And
Okay.
one of the objectives that the group wanted me to do is to get people to introduce themselves to new people. So I had
Hmm.
everybody stand up and I said, find a partner that you don't know, and you have 2.5 minutes to introduce yourself. And then I'm going to put you two into another group of two, and you're going to
Hmm.
introduce the person you just met. And so that was this
Oh.
fun interactive thing. They had to participate in active listening. And then when that was done, I said, okay, now stay with your group. You're going to reintroduce yourself, but you're not going to tell anybody that you're a vice president, that you're a mom
Hmm.
or a dad or a dog grandma or whatever the way you introduce yourself. You are not going to use any roles, titles, masks that you wear. Instead, you're going to say, hi, my name is Pamela. I love to connect the dots for growth with impact.
Hmm.
What are those core values that you have, those strengths that you bring to the table? Introduce yourself as that. And that's such a different way to look at things, and it brings your sort of your branding and who you are to the table. And it
Hmm.
takes out the aspect of I'm a mom, I'm at this, I'm at all the things you wear, and
Hmm.
pulls you back into here's the strengths that I offer in any situation I'm in. And it's been a really good exercise. And it's so interesting to see
Hmm.
people get curious about themselves in a way that they have to explore. Well, what does matter to me? Is it that I'm kind? Is it that I'm loving? Is it that I'm amazing with data and I'm curious
Hmm.
and so having people do that exercise to me feels like part of that personal branding. And it's
Yeah.
really fun to see people go through it. I challenge our listeners to do that too. Like, what are your
Oh
core
yeah.
strengths? And then how could you use that in two
Yep.
sentences to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah. I love the exercise. I did something very similar, I say back in the day, like I did it like, like 15 years ago, but it was in reality maybe like 6 months ago. And I remember the coach I worked with at the time say one very important sentence, which really stayed with me. So maybe it will serve your listeners as well. So we did the introductions and, without the rules and the titles and all of the good stuff. And she said, so what you said right now might change in the 6 months. Your personal brand keeps evolving because you
Mhm.
keep evolving. And I love that so much because, you know, I never wanted to be pushed or squeezed into a box. I wanted to just feel very free to explore who I am and what would it mean to become more of the things that I actually enjoy being.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And then to give yourself the grace to be multi-passionate, I think is really important
Mhm.
too. To your point earlier, like our parents are telling us, go do this one job. It's going to be the thing that pays in the future. We have all of these folks telling us what we should do and how we should live our lives. That's why this podcast is called Over the Should, because
Yeah.
I'm to the point where I'm just tired of all the shoulding in my life.
By the
Um,
way, I love the name of the podcast. Like the first time when we talked about it, I was like, oh my God, yes.
love that. I love that. I think just getting to a place where you can say, you know what, I love being an executive and I want to do that. But I also really enjoy chickens. And so I'm going to go buy some chickens. And I think yoga is a blast. And I want to figure out how to do like yoga certification. I don't know if I'm going to do anything with it, but I want to learn more. Like allowing yourself to open up to the different aspects of who you are is critically important to continue to refine your life, your destiny, who you want to be. I don't know every bit of who Pamela is going to be in 10 years because I haven't touched on all the things that excite me yet. So you have to create space to continue to learn and to grow and to be curious.
Yeah. So if I can just add one very important thing, which was a huge lesson for me when I was starting out with the Air Bunnies again, personal development, is that when I started exploring who am I outside of the executive title, I started with all of the things that, yes, I was really pulled towards in a sense, like that was psychology. So, like I went and I enrolled into Kingston University to get my master's in psychology, and then I did design sprint certifications. And then I got like 5 different certifications in coaching and all of that stuff. But that said, allow yourself to have things, interests, hobbies you don't necessarily need to monetize. So you don't need to monetize your interest in yoga. You don't need to already plan how you're going to organize a yoga retreat 5 years from now when you get another 3 yoga certifications. You do not need to have like purposeful art creation because you want to illustrate a book one day. You can simply allow yourself to have an interest because it interests you, period.
I love that. That is so important to say, just to give yourself an outlet.
Yes.
I love that. That's a really good point. Okay, so this is one of my favorite conversations I've ever had, and I want everybody to have access to you. So, Ivana, where can people find you? Where do you hang out?
Well, I recently discovered LinkedIn, which sounds really weird. Like I obviously had a profile on there for a long, long time, but I started posting on there maybe 3 weeks ago. So LinkedIn is my go-to. And then if you are ever interested in working with me or just like getting a little bit more of that like juice, you can either opt for a free strategy call where we are going to see if we are a good match. It's a decision on both ends. So, like I say, you can apply, but I have a very limited number of slots just because I still have my executive role. So I don't have like a full-time availability. Or you can subscribe to the newsletter. I write weekly. I send newsletters on Tuesday, 1 p.m. ET. They're weird, long. Sometimes we cry, sometimes we laugh, but we learn a lot. So I encourage you to subscribe.
I love that. Part of the intention of this podcast was to have conversations with people and it's not like an interview and it's not uptight. And I wanted people to grab their cup of coffee like I've been drinking with you or their margarita or their glass of wine wherever there, whatever time of day it is. And that is how this conversation has flowed. It's like I just sat down with a friend and we were on the back patio talking about life. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate how you show up here, how you're showing up on LinkedIn. I know you have an Instagram presence too. So you're in all of the right places, making a positive impact for women, and it's needed. I really appreciate you. I want to ask you one more question before we leave, because it's probably my favorite question. I am a sucker for quotes. I have books full of quotes. So if you had to tell me right now, it can change all the time, but if you had to tell me right now, what is your current favorite quote?
Okay. So I don't have a lot of favorite things, but I love the quote from Blaise Pascal since I was 17. The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing. And it was just, it gave me a permission to be who I am when the world wanted a logical explanation on what I'm going to do next.
That's deep. Bringing all the wisdom today. I love
Sorry,
it.
that got like really like I got a little sentimental over there, but over here. But yeah, that's it. That's my favorite quote.
That was wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being the guest today. I look forward to opportunities to doing this again with you. I can't wait to continue to follow your journey. You're doing great stuff, and just request the listeners to make sure they're connecting with you just to see what you're doing in your newsletter and how you're growing, and then maybe how they could work with you one day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pamela. I had such a blast. It was such a pleasure. I look forward like to everything you're going to do. Like, I love your podcast. So thank you for having me.